This weekend on Divine Mercy Sunday and the Sunday originally that concludes the octave of Easter, meaning it's been one day since we first began our Easter celebration last weekend, we are presented with this familiar account of Thomas. Thomas, who is forever labeled doubting because he hesitated to believe in the risen Jesus without first examining those marks of crucifixion that would prove with certainty for him that Jesus, who he knew had died on the cross, was actually now living. It is kind of unfortunate that that nickname has stuck with Thomas as it has across now nearly 2 millennia. Because actually, when you think about it, what he asks is not all that unreasonable. In normal human experience, the dead are not seen alive. And even though his close associates are telling him that Jesus is somehow an exception to that rule, Thomas just isn't ready to accept it without some further proof. Doubting, in the context of religious circles where faith is essential, is not usually considered a virtue. Yet one of the most striking lines in one of my favorite versions of the Stations of the Cross is placed on the lips of Jesus at the 12th station after he questions why the Father seems to be abandoning him. And it says, faith and hope are opposite sides of doubt and despair. They are not as different as many might think. You pass through doubt and despair, not around them. What we must appreciate is that doubting is not necessarily the sin of unbelief. It is the questioning of the basis of belief, which, if conducted carefully in the context of grace, will likely lead to a greater certainty of faith's reasonableness. And when we think about it, isn't that exactly what happened to Thomas, and is perhaps meant to happen for us in our own struggles with faith as well? Let us appreciate that the church itself has always held that faith must be reasonable. Indeed, we are not asked to believe in, as St. Paul says, cleverly devised myths, as the pagans of his day, and actually our own, truly do. Rather, we are invited to place our faith in an historical person, Jesus of Nazareth, who through the wisdom of his teachings and the wonders of his works was widely recognized in his own day and ever since as no ordinary man. Yet, ultimately, it was his resurrection from the dead that assured his original followers that he was beyond doubt from God and truly had been anointed by God, that is, as the Christ, sent as the Redeemer of our human race from sin and its consequence, which is nothing but final and endless death. If we, like Thomas, want to examine that further instead of just accepting it on face value, we should remember, especially on Divine Mercy Sunday, that Jesus seemed to have no problem whatsoever inviting Thomas to probe his hands and his side, though obviously seeing was enough for Thomas in the end to believe. Nor then should we think Jesus offended if we explore all the passages of the Old Testament to see if Jesus really fulfills them, Or we read and reread the Gospels and the letters of the apostles of the New Testament to see what questions it raises or how it rings true. Nor is it a problem to search out discoveries in biblical archaeology to see what is unearthed, especially if there are things that bear witness to the actual existence of places that the gospel told us Jesus visits. And Jesus would clearly encourage us to examine the lives of his original followers to see that of the apostles, all but one died a martyr's death, rather than ever contradict the truth about his resurrection that had been revealed to them. So let us be unafraid to examine science, to find all the evidence it can provide that there is indeed a mind behind this design we call the natural world. And let us dare to look at and weigh the scientific proofs, pro or con, of such things as the Shroud of Turin, the Sudarium of Oviedo, or the numerous Eucharistic miracles. Let us keep looking into the lives of the saints, the apparitions of the Virgin Mary, and some of the unexplainable phenomena often associated with these, to appreciate that such phenomenon are not often seen in religions other than Christianity, and thus grapple with what that might mean. Are our Christian imaginations simply wilder than those of Buddhists or Muslims? Or is there something substantial to be found there? Indeed, we can and should keep probing and questioning these matters and other evidence, not as dyed-in-the-wool skeptics, but as those who seek a surer foundation for the faith we hold in order to give greater confidence that it is indeed reasonable to adhere to it. The other nickname for Thomas, twice recorded by St. John in his Gospel, is Didymus, Greek for twin. And there is speculation that if Thomas wasn't actually a biological twin, then he may have been given that nickname by the other disciples because in his appearance he actually looked a lot like Jesus. But on the other hand, each time we find ourselves prayerfully saying, "Lord, I do believe, but help my unbelief." In fairness, we are honest inquirers and respectful explorers of the matters of faith, not unbelieving atheists. But if some may want to label us doubters for seeking greater assurance of the truth, then let us take that in stride, accepting that we are then the spiritual twins of our brother Thomas, who may have questioned a bit at first, but who went on to evangelize people as far away as Kerala in southern India, and who died defending the resurrection of Jesus Christ as the cornerstone on which our Christian faith must rest. So let us pray through Thomas' intercession that we will always boldly and unwaveringly profess the very same.